am so proud that we have several brothers from the association who are here representing AAFCA. Anthony just threw up his fist. And so, yeah, we have a great lineup of members from Katia in Philadelphia, Anthony Johnson in Texas, Emmanuel in Chicago, Rhonda, Rhonda, you're not in front of your camera, in Atlanta, Reginald Pounder in Chicago, Gil Robertson, who's actually Ed Adams, our producer, in Atlanta, also in Atlanta, and we have Miss Farrar. What market are you in?
I'm in Philadelphia.
Oh, so you're in Philly too?
I am, yes.
Okay, great. You're one of our newer members, so it's nice to meet you virtually.
Yes, hello to everybody.
And so Dondre, of course, you know, we don't need any introduction to him because we've been watching him all of our lives, you know, from the Cosby Show on through, you know, the many sitcoms and film projects and things that he's been a part of. So he has, I've known him for a number of years, and his wife is one of my absolute favorite people in Hollywood. I'm mesmerized by Sally, who I've known for over 20 years. Yes. But I've known Dondre for quite some time as well, and it's a privilege, brother, for us to talk to you today about this amazing book that we can see in the background. Perfect branding, I love it.
Thank you.
And I love how they bookend you. And so, without further ado, I'm going to let you guys do what you do best.
Okay.
But Mr. Whitfield, you have the center stage.
First of all, let me just say that again, as I was saying earlier, just before you got on, you know, my family and I are very fortunate to be blessed with great resources, and so we pray for those that are less fortunate and less resourced during this time. I want to say thank you because all of you could be doing something very different. You could be binging your favorite shows right now, or something of that nature. But just for you to be able to spend this time with me, to be able to hear this out, I'm very thankful for that. My story is extremely different than the one that you've seen out of my career of 35 years as an actor. I grew up in Brooklyn, not the Disney gentrified one that you see now, the original one, fighting every other day. I know that seems very impossible as a light-skinned, back then curly-headed kid, but in that neighborhood, you walk outside looking like that, and the first comment is, "Oh, you think you cute," and there's a fight. My father was in and out of jail for my entire adolescence. My uncle, who was more like a brother because he was close in proximity, in age. So I grew up in an extremely rough time, extremely rough neighborhood, rough circumstances, and I bumped my head up against life's brick wall, not understanding what manhood was about. People often think that manhood is a magical age that you come to. Some people think it's 18 because you can legally drink. Some people think you can legally drive. Some people think it's 21 because, you know, now you're ready to drink. Car companies think it's 25. Like, that's when you become a man. You're responsible now. We'll lend you a car now because you're 25. You got to be a man now. Manhood is not an age. It is an accumulation of information and an application to your life, your dedication to service. So what I talk about in Male versus Man is that males look to serve while men look to be of service. And that the true mark of manhood is about your dedication to service. There's so many things that I cover in this book, and very few of those things were ever taught to me by a man in a sit-down conversation. All of these things have been an accumulation of stealing from a great many men that I've encountered in my life. One of the other controversial things that I touch on in this book is my mother, who was and is a dynamic woman. So was my grandmother. My mother raised 3 sons. She taught us all how to be considerate and how to be conscious. What my mother couldn't teach me how to be was a man. She couldn't teach me how to be something that she was not. I have a 15-year-old daughter. Every time I speak in front of, audiences that are usually sister-driven, I ask them the question, if you're raising a son, raise your hand. And they raised their hands, and I said, raise your hand if you think that you're teaching him how to be a man. They all raised their hand. I said, okay, I have a 15-year-old daughter. Can I teach my daughter how to be a woman? They laugh, they high five, they're like, he crazy. No, he can't teach her how to be no woman, which then they're absolutely right. But what they missed was the fact that they felt like they could teach their son how to be a man, but missed the fact that I can't teach my daughter how to be a woman. Now, they were right on half the points. The half the point is I can't teach my daughter how to be a woman. That's my wife's job. If I didn't have my wife in my life or at their disposal, I would be dropping them off to sisters of mine who would act as surrogate moms in order to teach them what that's like. Now, I can teach my daughter how to be in relationship with a man. I can teach her how to be a great human being, but how to be a woman, that's outside my pay grade. I'm going to give you a statistic that further drives home what I'm talking about. Almost 80% of our teachers are female. Over 40% of our boys are being raised by single mothers. Those are staggering facts. What that means is that almost half of all of our boys have either entirely or mostly female influences at home and at school. Our gang violence numbers are staggering, to say the least. From New York, Chicago, LA, every gangster that I've ever spoken to in my entire life, and I've spoken to a great many. I go to hoods all across this country, and every gangster that I've ever spoken to in my entire life has said to me how much they love their mother, how much they would do anything for their mother, how much their mother did for them. What they never say is, I love my mother enough to not gangbang. The point here is that the secret sauce to manhood is not a woman. The secret sauce to manhood is not your mother. I have an 11-year-old son. My wife is from the south side of Chicago. She ain't no punk. My wife is not a shrinking violet, okay? Look, I'm from Brooklyn. My wife's from the south side of Chicago. If we don't do this thing right in here, somebody could die. Okay? Y'all can laugh at that. That's funny. My wife is, and Gil can tell you, you ask my wife a question, she's going to give you an answer. Matter of fact, if you don't ask her a question, she's going to give you an answer. But with my son, my wife is an absolute mess. She is raising our daughter and she is loving her son. My job is to step in whenever necessary, and that's a lot, to say, boy, come here. And to give my son the messaging of manhood that he needs, so when it's appropriately time for him to step out on his own, and society is going to expect him to act like the man that he looks like, he will be ready. My wife cannot prepare him for that moment. My mother prepared me for a great many moments, but I had to get in front of a great many men to get me to come into this self. That is not to shame our sisters. That is not a judgment. That is an assessment. That is a loving assessment about how we have to activate our men to produce other men. I have often said that our number one problem in this country is we don't produce enough men that produce more men. And our number two problem is we don't produce enough women that know how to readily identify the difference between a male and a man. That's why many of our sisters are inappropriately partnered with males instead of men. So this work is a dedication to my grandmother. May she rest in peace. She grew up in New Bern, North Carolina, very extremely small town, the home of Pepsi, if you know anything about that. And she moved the family to Brooklyn. Now, you either got to be crazy or a maverick to move your family from New Bern, North Carolina to Brooklyn, New York. My grandmother was a combination of both, thank God. When I do this work, I honor my grandmother, my mother, my wife, and my daughter, because I'm trying to give information to my sisters about what the difference between a male and a man is. For my brothers, I honor them with my father, who was in and out of jail my entire life, like I said, my uncle, who was likewise in and out of jail, my son, and myself. So those four pillars for each side has been the motivating factors, have been the motivating factors for me writing this book and contributing it to society. I think it is going to change the game as it pertains to our brothers getting the instruction that they need in order to have males matriculate into manhood and have men elevate their level of manhood. Manhood, I've often said, is kind of like a martial art. Even when you get to the, when you pursue a martial art, when you attain a black belt, many people that think that that's it. That's not it. That's not the destination. This is a journey. So you can become a first degree black belt, second degree, third degree, fourth degree, grandmaster. Manhood is very similar. What degree of manhood have you elevated yourself to? And so this book covers all of those things. It's the contribution that I feel like I would have given to myself in order to matriculate myself into manhood. And I think it's going to be richly important, not just for our community, for our culture, but for society at large.
Now, Dondre, talk about the chapters in the book.
Oh my gosh. There's everything. One of my favorite chapters in the book is called Calm in Chaos. And I have often, whenever I think about my childhood, I think about chaos. There was constant chaos outside of our apartment, chaos inside our apartment. When you grow up in a turbulent environment, when you don't have, my mother was pregnant with me at a very early age. She was 16. My father was 17. So you're talking about kids raising kids. And my father and I were estranged from each other for 20 years. At 26 years old, I had gotten together with my father. And in so many words, I don't speak that way now, but in so many words at that time, I told him that next time I saw him, one of us was going to die, and it wouldn't be me. And at 46 years old, having a conversation with my daughter, who asked me if I knew where my father was, I realized that I was teaching her some great things in life: how to be gracious, how to forgive people, how to have empathy. But I was also teaching her, by not being connected to my father, that everybody is worthy of all of those things except one person who you deem unworthy. And that was the motivating factor for me reconciling with my father. Now, I realized that my father couldn't father me because he was unfathered himself. And so this chapter 3, is about how to remain calm in a space of chaos, and I feel like men need to be able to introduce that to their environments. That's not to say that our sisters are incapable of doing that and that they shouldn't do it as well, but I'm a man. My job is to hold my brothers lovingly accountable. There's a sister somewhere who needs to hold our sisters lovingly accountable. My job is to hold our brothers lovingly accountable and give them that instruction.
Panel, what kind of questions do you have?
Well, I have one for you, Dondre. You talked at one point in time about great coaching, and you talked,
yes.
So can you speak to why coaching is important here?
Oh my goodness. So let me thank you for that question, brother. It's so I often when I speak about this, I ask young brothers that I'm in front of, name me your favorite basketball players of all time. And then, you know, the usual suspects come up, you know, MJ, LeBron, Magic, you know, Scott Curry, you know, all of these great names come up. And I say, tell me what they all had in common. And they said, they were talented. I said, yep, they were talented. What else? They were driven. Yep, they were driven. What else? And they name all of these things. Nobody ever says what I'm driving at. And I said, they all had great coaching. From the time that they had a ball in their hand to the time that they got a ginormous contract in the NBA, they still had coaching. They got strength and conditioning coaches. They had defensive coaches. They had shooting coaches. They had mental coaches. They all have, despite their enormous talents, they still have coaches. Why do we think that we can become great men without great coaching? Everything that you become great at in this world, you have coaching at. And yet, we don't think that our young brothers need coaching at how to become great men. Those are facts. And that's the reason why we have so many males running around in society right now, is because they have missed out. They are a mirror. They're telling you, nobody's ever coached me at this. And that's why I'm not good at it. That's why coaching is so important in this area.
Hi, Dondre. Katya Woods out of Philadelphia. You talked about how you didn't have role models, but you managed to do something that people who had two parents in their home had way more advantages than you. You managed to transition from a child actor to an adult actor, and we never heard about you being crazy, on drugs, on jail, you know, the usual thing. So what do you intone that? Obviously, you, even though you might not have had your father, but you had strong people around you that were like, or you thought, hey, I can't do that. That's not going to fly with my mom, my grandma, my neighborhood or something. So what do you atone that to?
People have often asked me, they said, well, if you didn't have a role model in your father, how did you come to this point? So early on, the things that kept me in line was the fear of my mother hitting me with pots. Okay. That works for a little while. But after a while, when you get hit with enough pots, you really get used to being hit by pots. I will never forget when my mother stopped beating me and started punishing me by keeping me in the house. And I remember, this drives home the point of how beatings don't really work. We think they do. They don't really work. They work for a time, and then after that, all of that goes away. I remember specifically saying to myself, my mother put me on punishment for a week. I couldn't go outside for a week. I remember literally saying to my mom, could you beat me instead? So the beatings, after a while, just like everything else, you develop a callus.
Now, DeAndre, I got some good beatings.
Oh man, listen, let me tell you something, bro. Did you hear what I said with pots? I'm talking about anything she could get her hands on, homeboy. I'm talking about I had everything from the extension cord, pots, pans, boots. And that's not to disparage my mother. She was doing the best that she could.
Oh yeah.
Right? But the point is that after a while, the role model that I actually had was the anti-role model that I had in my father. So there were times in my life where I said, wow, I'm not sure what to do here. And I would ask myself, what would my father do? And I got clear about what my father would do. And then I did the opposite.
I got a question for
Yes,
you,
sir.
if you don't mind.
Yes,
just to kind of piggyback off of the calluses that you were talking about, because
Yes, sir.
I'm pretty sure we've all had different types of emotional calluses because of the physical calluses, right? So I noticed the chapter in your book, Creating Safe Spaces, right?
Yes, sir.
And I was wondering if you could kind of elaborate on, especially for Black men, you know, creating that safe emotional space, you know, and also if it includes creating a safe space for the women in our lives as well. So I was wondering if you could touch on that.
My brother, thank you so much. I just started grabbing my arms just now because I got chills from that question. This is such a dynamic conversation. You all are inside my head. I get emotional talking about this because we often hear of our sisters lacking a space of safety, that they don't feel safe. But we never take the time to talk about how our brothers don't feel safe. We talked about how DL grew up in LA. I grew up in Brooklyn. We didn't even know that feeling safe was a human right. If you don't know that your own safety is a right, and that's something that you should feel, there's no way for you to know that your assignment as a man is to provide safety for your sister. If you don't feel safety yourself, you have no concept of what safety is. So if you don't have it for yourself, there's no way for you to be a provider of it. It makes me so emotional because I couldn't, and I'm tearing up now, because I couldn't think of a single solitary day in my entire adolescence where I felt safe. Not once. And so there's no wonder that in my matriculation into manhood as a male of 20, 21, 22, 25, that I couldn't provide that sense of safety for any of my sisters. It's devastating. The reason why this book is so important is because it gives us a pathway forward into our manhood. And when we understand that the intention around our creation was for us to be the walking tree of our community, then we can get to the business of doing what's necessary for the women and children in our lives. I say the walking tree because trees, look what trees do. We give them back poison in the form of carbon, right? The tree gives us back oxygen, which allows us to be able to better breathe. The tree provides food. The tree provides cover. It provides shade. Trees were the first shelter before we had homes. If you didn't have that shelter, you would burn up from the harmful elements of the world. A man is supposed to be the walking tree of his house and his community. But if nobody ever teaches you that that's your assignment, if nobody ever coaches you, how great do you become at that? That's why this book is so necessary for this time.
One of your quotes, DeAndre, from the book that I took note of was, if we rely on everything to be in total alignment with our beliefs or feelings, for something to be perfect will be at a total deficit our entire lives.
Yes.
Can you talk about what that means in this social age, in this cancel culture that we have, where it seems like, you know, everyone unites to collectively disagree and therefore dismiss unpopular opinions? Like, for a boy matriculating into manhood, how does he go against that collective grain?
Oh my goodness, such a great question, sister. You know, first of all, when you talk about this cancel culture, I can't tell you how many times specifically I have posted on my social about this cancerous cancel culture, simply because we are looking, you know, one of the things that I talk about is that that while men are the elevated version of our male counterparts, we are not perfect. We're still human beings. Perfectly pursue means to constantly be in pursuit of it. I draw the analogy often when I talk about when they used to race greyhounds. And in order to get the greyhound to run faster, they would speed up this mechanical rabbit. Now, the greyhound never caught the rabbit, but in order to speed the greyhound up, they sped up the mechanical rabbit, because the greyhound was in hot pursuit of its prey. As a man, we have to be in hot pursuit of our purpose. Our purpose is to be men. Our purpose is to cover the women and children in our lives. We never get to a space of perfection, only a space of perfectly pursuing our purpose, which is to be men. And unfortunately, because we do fall short from time to time, we run up against this cancerous cancel culture, to your point. And it's terrible, because what it does is it never gives us a pathway moving forward. For my brothers, let me drive home this point, and I hope I spoke to what you were getting at, sister. But it moves to something that's even larger. You all know that my first job was on the Cosby Show. It's one of the greatest experiences of my entire life. In thinking about my brother, Dr. Cosby, it's tragic because I got interviewed once and I was asked the question, what's the greatest role you've ever played? And I thought about it for a single second. And I said, the role of a man. And they said, what movie was that from? And I said, no, sir, that is not a role in a movie. That's a role in real life. The most important role I'm ever going to play is that of a man, because if I don't play that role well, it will diminish every other thing and tarnish every other thing that I ever do in my entire life. Bill Cosby had the most watched show in television history, arguably one of the greatest comedy show in television history, one of the greatest philanthropists ever. There are literally hordes, thousands of people who went on to experience higher education as a result of his philanthropy. And yet, when you say the name Bill Cosby, the first thing you're going to think about is what? The nonsense, right? He taught me so many powerful lessons as an adolescent. I was 15 years old playing a 13-year-old. He taught me so many great things that I still apply to my life right now. The most powerful thing that he taught me was that, which was that the most important role you're ever going to play is that of a man. And he taught me based on his mistake, because I got to see how his mistake informed my life and informed this work This is the most important role I'm ever going to play in my entire life. Because if I don't get this one right, it will stain and tarnish everything else that I ever do in my life. And those are facts.
Hi, Dondre. Anthony Johnson here, the movie brother.
Peace, brother.
Going back to your childhood, and you know, you're growing up in Brooklyn, fights every day. This is something I always think about, especially our young people. You know, what kind of exposure did you get before the Cosby Show, right? What exposure did you get during that time to know that there was something else out there? Or was it just, you know, a God-given, you internally thinking about, hey, what did my dad do? I'm gonna do the opposite. Can you speak to, you know, those early years of you being formed and even, pursuing the route that you went? Can you speak to that?
You know, great question, brother Anthony. When I was 13, I was in junior high school at the time, and I was walking with a friend of mine, and we were coming out of the subway, and my friend had a leather bomber jacket. And I wanted that leather bomber jacket so bad, all right? And we're coming out of I envied him so much. And we're coming off the train, we're about to exit the station. And as we're getting ready to go through the door to come out of the station, my friend gets wedged in the door by assailant number 1. Assailant number 2 holds a gun to my head and says, "Tell your boy to run his jacket." What was so interesting about that time was I never panicked. For some reason, I was calm and I got a download. As a spiritual man, I call it a download, but you know, because you don't want people to call you crazy, because God spoke to me and God said, so the download that I got, whenever a thought isn't yours and you hear it or get it clearly, that's not you anymore. That's God, in my opinion. The download I got was, relax. Tell Josh to take off his jacket. Everything is going to be fine, but just stay calm. It was eerie. But after that, I was never afraid of anything in life again. To this day, you couldn't get me to panic if you put me inside of a burning structure, because I know that there is a path forward. And my job is to remain calm in that space of chaos in order to find it. And I know that if I stay calm, I will find it. But if I panic, I won't. One day I taught my daughter, we went to the Caribbean. My daughter, at the time, she was like 6 years old. I taught her in our pool how to snorkel. And we were going out on this boat. We were going to go snorkel. She was going out for the first time. And I said to her, I said, "Parker, whatever you do, anything happens, don't panic." And she said, "Daddy, what is panic?" And I didn't have a way to clearly get her to understand what I was saying, but I knew I had to give her something that would be rudimentary enough for her to get it and immediately apply it. And I said, "Parker, panic is what people do that makes them stop doing what they know how to do. So if you know how to swim and you panic, you actually will stop swimming because you're panicking." That moment in time got me to really go to the most elevated space in being calm. And as I went through my own maleness, coming into my 20s, I made so many mistakes because I didn't have coaching and none of it felt good. And I kept asking myself, there has got to be a better way. There's got to be a more elevated space. I feel like life is doing me and I'm not doing it. And those things got me to really begin to pursue, okay, who am I? What am I? I tell folks all the time, acting is my passion, but activation is my purpose. I love acting, but it's not the reason why I was put here. When God created me, he didn't just create me for me to be an actor. I literally use my acting platform to suit my purpose. So if I never act another day in my life, I'm gonna be fine. What I won't be fine with is me not coming into my manhood fully and me not acting more brothers to come into theirs. Me not being able to serve as the cover for my sisters, to serve our children. That I will not be good with, because that serves as my peace, because that's my assignment in life. That's literally why I was created. That was the intention behind my creation. So to your question, Anthony, every single day felt like I didn't know why I was here. Me being on the Cosby Show, me buying a brand new car, buying a house, buying jewelry, none of that made me feel at peace. In fact, it only stirred up more chaos. Like the song, more money, more problems. It stirs up more chaos. Every single brother that I talked to in all those interviews pointed to, particularly when you see the interview that I did with my brother Will Smith. If that won't put it in perspective for you about how all of this nonsense that we think is going to bring us peace, like all of the stuff, wait till you see that interview. The only thing that's going to bring you peace is for you to walk out what your earthly assignment is. And it's not about all that ancillary nonsense. It's about being a man and so serving the women and children in your life, period.
So are you saying that acting hasn't given you anything internal on your journey to manhood?
It has afforded me great accomplishment. It has not made me successful. Any award, any accolade, 35 years of my journey as an actor in this industry, being on some great projects from The Cosby Show to Queen Sugar, has all been awesome. That has been a great space of accomplishment. But what makes me a successful man is marrying my personal and my professional life together and making certain that at the end of the day, I am the husband that I'm supposed to be. I'm the father I'm supposed to be. I'm the man that I'm supposed to be. Everything else outside of that is just about my accomplishment. And if you don't believe that, look at the many people, not just brothers, but brothers and sisters who have so much accomplishment in their career, yet they have drug addiction, alcohol addiction, sexual addiction, all these other addictions. If your career and your accomplishment in it made you whole, brought you into a space where you feel like you've been walking out your assignment, there'd be no need for you to have any of those addictions. None. Those things just speak to what your passions are. The question now becomes, what is your purpose? Why are you here? When God created you, why did God create you? What were you put here for? And are you walking it out? Until you find that, very rarely will you ever find sustainable peace.
Well, where can we find the book? I know you're with one of the tentpole publishers.
Zondervan through HarperCollins published, and it's anywhere you can buy books. Amazon, thank God Amazon ran out, so they had to replace, which is awesome. Amazon,
Walmart,
Books A Million, Walmart, Barnes and Noble, anywhere books are sold.
Is it on e-readers? Because we trying to conserve, save trees.
Sister Kindle, Audible, oh yeah, for sure. And I had to make sure that I did my audiobook, because I've heard some audiobooks and some of those jokers are painful. As an actor, I was like, okay, I'm ready for this. I know you guys see Restoration Coach. What is that about? I counsel a great many married couples, and I coach some pretty accomplished folks in the area of manhood. But the one thing that I think is really powerful that I'm doing now is restoring marriages. My wife and I have been partnered for, I call her my girlfriend of 23 years. We've been together for 23 years. We've been married for 18 of those. And so my second book that I am now working out the chapters for is my relationship book. It's the gift that I would have loved to have given my mother and my father at a time where they didn't have instruction. And the gift that I would have given my wife and I when we first got together, we were the most ill-prepared people for marriage ever. I didn't have a father to teach me how to be a husband. My wife didn't have the benefit of having what I call dress rehearsals with her father about how to be in relationship with the man. That's one of the profound existences of my life, is being able to speak that into my daughter. I am her dress rehearsal for how to be in relationship with a man. And so my wife and I were extremely ill prepared for the trials of marriage. But along the way, and I've often said this, my manhood began the day that I stopped doing things that I had to lie about. When you come from the street, when you come from that environment, the environment teaches you the pathway forward, the way to get a leg up is to lie, is to cheat. And so how do you apply that in the street? And then you come into a space where you're required to be a man, you're required to be responsible, and the way to elevate yourself, the street taught you how to lie and cheat to do that. And now all of a sudden, we're supposed to magically have skill sets that no one ever gave us in the street. And so my manhood began the day that I stopped doing things that I had to lie about. And my marriage began the day that I stopped trying to change my wife to accommodate things that were broken in me. So my relationship book is dealing with all of those things and giving my people the instruction that we never get. Even when we see our relatives who have powerful relationships, no one ever sits us down and gives us comprehensive instruction. I can't tell you how many times I've had people who seem to be doing something well say, don't worry about it. You'll figure it out. You'll know what to do. What? That never works. That's like that's being able to fly a plane, land a plane. Don't worry about it. Once you get up in the air at 35,000 feet, you'll figure it out. That's a crash landing waiting to happen every single time. And that's what's happening with our brothers in their manhood. And that's what's often happening in our community with our relationships. We don't have enough instruction on how to be able to better do it.
Let me ask one. Anthony, you were going to say something.
No, go ahead.
One thing that I really wanted us to take away from this, and I know there's no one answer, but from your research, Dondre, and your observations, what can we do to save ourselves? What can we do to save ourselves and each other in our community? Because our communities are falling apart, and it's distressing, as I know we all feel that way.
Absolutely distressing. Every single day for me is a stressor because I feel like I can't get my hands on enough people. And that's why I depend on, people like yourself to amplify the work that I'm trying to get accomplished. The pathway forward for our brothers is work like this. Male versus Man. My brother Jason Wilson wrote a powerful book called Cry Like a Man. My brother Devon Franklin wrote a powerful book called, The Truth About Men. All of those things are things that we can use to elevate ourselves. And I truly feel like, and my sisters, I want you to hear my heart when I say this. So many of our brothers have abandoned their post and put our community in your hands, in your lap. No one can do it all by themselves. No one. You can't. That's one of the reasons why we're in the position that we're in, because we've put it all on your shoulders. And you can't do it by yourselves. You need your brothers. And I don't care what messaging you get, and I'm giving you this as a loving brother. I don't care what messaging you get about you can do it all by yourself. You're a woman, here you roar. You need your brothers. And our job is to activate our brothers so that we can do this together. I can't do it by myself. You can't do it by yourself. We need each other. The reason why it takes a man and a woman to create a child together is because that child needs the messaging of both man and woman. Period. That is a fact. So if you fool yourself into thinking that you're going to be able to do it on your own, just look at the statistics. You don't have to believe me. You can't do it by yourself. I can't do it by myself. We have got to do this together. Period. We need each other. And for me as a man, my job is to hold my brothers lovingly accountable and go, yo, bro, let's go. We got to get our uniforms on. We got to get to work. Let me just tell you how serious this is. And I talk about this in the prerequisite of my book. The reason why I called the prerequisite that and not the introduction is because often when you read a book, the introduction is often an author mindlessly pontificating about something that you really didn't need. And you said, you know what, I could have just went straight to chapter 1. I really didn't need to read that. I called my introduction the prerequisite because that's what you need to read first before you go to chapter 1. For 2 reasons. Number 1, my best friend in life, 15 years ago, it'll be 16 years next month. We were riding our motorcycles and he was a novice rider. I was a very experienced rider. When I say wheelies on the freeway, going through turns 90 miles an hour, all that kind of stuff. I used to do that. And I did that while I was on television. This is my male self. Again, males seeking to serve themselves. That was me and my male self all day. We're on the 110 freeway here in California, and there's this big sweeping turn coming up. And the download that I got was, don't do it today. Look after your brother who is a novice rider. Stay with him. Don't do it today. And I ignored that download. And I allowed my flesh to make the decision for me. So I communicated to him, hey, bro, I'm going up. You slow down. It's a big turn coming up. You slow down. I'm going up. He nods his head. So in order for me to have permission, I figured I would do it again. Brother, slow down. I'm going up here. I'm going to speed up, but you slow down. He nods his head. I go through with another one of my brothers who is an experienced rider. We go through this turn 90 miles an hour, knee down. I'm talking blaring. We get to the light. Me and my brother high five each other. We turn around and look back to see if my brother made it. We wait and we wait and we wait. Nothing. A car finally comes up, pulls up next to me and says, hey, you guys got a bike down back there. The short of this story, because there's a long, powerful version to this story, but the short of it is, I lost my best friend. And it was a powerful example of what happens when a man abandons his post. It's like the microcosm of what is happening to our community because our brothers have abandoned their post. From that day, when I lost my best friend, his last name was Parker. And my daughter's name is Parker. She was 2 months from being born when he passed. I vowed I would never leave my post again. And a part of my post now is trying to activate my brothers to come to their elevated space in manhood. That is my post. And if all of our brothers man our post, we will restore and resuscitate our community. That is a fact. Every single one of our brothers that are out here gangbanging need the love of a man. They already have the love of their mother. They're missing the love of their father. They're missing the love of a man in their life that speaks life into the existence of their manhood. And they think that they're getting it in the form of their brothers because they don't even know what love is. So when another brother says, I love you enough to kill somebody for you, they think that's love. That's all that they know. But if they got the true love of a man who would activate their own manhood, they would get out of that street immediately because they would understand that their assignment is to be a cover for the women and children in their life.
Dondre, this is amazing. We want to thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
I know, yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your time and for your dedication and your willingness to tackle this, because this is a heavy subject.
Thank you, brother. My brothers and sisters, thank you so much. I know I'm long-winded. My apologies. I'm extremely passionate about this. And so I literally could talk about this like when the sun comes up until it goes down. And actually, I often do. So, but I apologize that I bled all over you today. But it's in honor of what I know my assignment is. So I hope that you'll give me some grace and forgive me on that.
No, we love you, man.
Thanks for your time.
Good. Thank you so much.